It's lovely to be back in Latvia, and it's great to be in this audience. I can see that I bring you greetings from Bristol in the UK, which is a very cool city. It's got lots of stuff going on, and I can see from this audience that the solidarity economy is cool in Latvia. So that's a very good thing, and I think, you know, making things cool and exciting and fun is definitely a very important part of what we need to be about. But I am going to talk about some things that maybe don't sound quite so fun, like green political economy. And I also just do want to make another connection here with this question of things needing to be complex enough, but not more complex. I gather Einstein is quite popular around here, and Einstein said that things should be complex enough, but not more complex than they need to be. My institute is a systems thinking institute, so part of what that means is that we think things have many causes that overlap together. We also think about the different scales that things happen, and we're very interested in the local to global scale. So the idea of nested scales from the local to the national to, let's say, European to the global, for example. So the social and solidarity economy is often linked to localization discussions. So making things work more at the local level is very important. But I also want to say that there are things that are very important about the other levels as well. So the institute has these aims. So we try to promote, we're educational, we try to promote informed action for human and planetary flourishing. We are very interested in how we're going to share the planet. So we have done some research about planetary boundaries and planetary resource issues. So the idea of convergence, from contraction and convergence in relation to climate debates, is that rich countries need to decrease their use of planetary resources, and poorer countries need to come up to still develop. So this is a big challenge for the current global economy. We're very interested in the idea of inclusive sustainability, that green issues are not just for one group of people, and we have very strong links to those fighting for social justice, and we think greater equality is an essential part of sustainability. So it's quite interesting that Bristol was the European Green Capital in 2015. So there's a lot of green issues were at the top of the agenda, but they didn't talk much about the social issues. But then this year we elected a new mayor, who completely stood on an equality ticket. So just to think about the different levels again, I mean, you may have heard about this Brexit nonsense. Well, I have to apologise for the attitudes of some of the British people, but there was a lot about that vote that was a protest against the rising inequality, and this is true across Europe. So one of the discussions we had as part of our Converge project was a new social contract for sustainability, what that might look like in Europe. And I think the discussion about solidarity economy is a big, big part of that, because we need to find a new economic way that can help us have a new social contract for sustainability. Solidarity economy is a very important part of the idea of a new social contract for sustainability. And also, to talk about the global level, let's not forget the world has signed up to the new Sustainable Development Goals. And actually, if we're going to achieve them, we're going to need to change the economy. And just to mention the last word, resilience. There's a lot of interest in this, that we need systems that can withstand shocks and can bounce back. We can see that the global economic system is not resilient. So one thing we work with is Earth system science, as showing some of the boundaries within which humans need to live. And just before I get on to the real economics bit, I just wanted to say a word about the freedom question. I think this is very interesting that, in a way, there's a kind of green dilemma, if you like. We don't want to go back to communist imposition, but the freedoms of consumer culture are creating massive inequality and ruining the planet. I would say that the social and solidarity economy has the potential to be an expression of freedom, where we try to find ways to actually live our values. This won't be simple, and it will mean a lot of dialogue and engagement and tolerance. I was going to mention just something very quickly, that we're involved in an economic project about systems modelling of different aspects of the economy. I won't talk much about that, but one example of a project that's for the students is to develop a systems interactive model of a bio-based economy that includes stakeholders. So there are links that can be made with some of the other things that we're doing at the Institute. And just to talk about the big challenge to the social and sustainability economy, I think, the question of how we work with the processes, the living processes of the planet. And that's partly addressed in something that we've done on land use, and how issues around land use and farming and food production and consumption are a very, very big part of the climate change story. It's not just the industrial economy. This is a picture of our Indian partners in southern India composting. They work very much to revive and build on traditional practices of good land use. Okay, so just to then think about what kind of political economy, what kind of understanding can we have of the economy that can help us. I'm just going to quote from as far as I know, the only professor of green political economy. He says, green political economy can be thought of as motivated by creating an economy as if we mean to stay around and enjoy it. I'll give you the quote in a minute. Not as a process of liquidating the planet, exploiting people, and unequally distributing the fruits of that economic growth and calling it progress. So there's the quote. So thank you. I'm going to say that I think a useful way to talk about money and how that relates to the solidarity economy is to take some things from political economy and some things from a political ecology perspective. The political economy understands economic relations as always social relations, and political ecology understands all economic relations as ecological relations. So political ecology has a critique of the limits of political economy. It's not good enough, and that has the way that has created all kinds of problems for people thinking about social justice. The tradition needs to be updated. One thing that political economy often won't accept are the limits of planetary limits and the limits of population. So if we think about the future of money, one way we can look at that is understanding the economic system now and thinking about how things work right now. We can think about what's likely to happen with global finance in the next financial crisis or the next phase of the crisis. I mean, we can discuss that, but I think that there's overwhelming evidence that the financial system is still extremely unstable and is in quite big trouble. If we think about how the system's working now in a complex way, one of the system's ideas is the concept of leverage points, where you can get in and make some movement happen, open up the system. And this helps us think about how we might need to cooperate with in order to get this leverage to work. So if we think about what money is right now, it's a very complicated question, actually, with many people disagree and have different viewpoints. One of the things about the financial crisis is financialization. So some people say, oh, well, the problem is that money doesn't reflect the real economy anymore. So they sort of want to go back to the days when the money was about the real economy. But unless we have global regulation that stops the creation of these new financial instruments, this is not going to happen. So all the banks and the finance houses have still just gone back to doing everything they were doing before. So our question is, so what is money then in this case? Is it simply a tool of exchange? How does it relate to political and economic power? And how might this help us understand the solidarity economy and what kind of money we need? Okay, so I'm going to look at a very kind of as simple or complex as you want it to be analysis of these three kinds of ways that money exists. So money as statement of account, what have you got? Money as a social credit and debt relation, who owes what to whom? And money in relation to a whole range of institutional power structures. And all these work together, but you can sort of talk about them a bit separately. So I just want to draw out some of the ways I think this helps us think about some of the important issues to do with a green solidarity economy. We know about the GDP debate. There's a big debate that our monetary sum of gross domestic product is not a great way to judge human progress. And one thing that's been suggested to try to address ecological questions is to use a concept of natural capital. I think there are many problems with this, but it shows you that people are still trying to create an account in terms of ecological terms. This issue here is clearly related to the way in which money is expected to generate interest, as Jenneth was saying. But also, this issue here is completely linked to the way in which, for historical reasons, there are many countries or groups of countries that have institutional control over money and how money is used in the world. I can give you some great references to papers where this kind of approach is applied to global mining, for example, or global food production. So another way to think about the future of money is not what's going to happen according to the current system and how what the trends are, but to think about what we'd like it to be, to reconstruct currency in a solidarity and social economy. So this relates to experiments that people have done on local currencies. For example, I have some information here about the Bristol pound. And the Bristol pound is a quite successful local currency. It's not a completely independent currency because you buy Bristol pounds with pounds sterling. But when you buy your Bristol pounds, you are saying, I want to join the solidarity economy of Bristol. So all the organisations, companies in this book have signed up to Bristol Pounds and are let's say, the green shoes of a new social economy. There have been more radical experiments with local currency. This happens automatically when there's massive inflation, like when there was in Argentina, for example. But other experiments in local economy have actually been shut down by the government. It's very challenging, and there are many reasons why. And you can see partly why that money does embody and express social relations. So it's partly about who's got power under the current system and who's benefiting. And this is not an argument against doing it or to say it'll never happen at all, but it's just as well to be aware of the challenges that you do pose. On the other hand, the social economy does many things that governments should be happy about. So the social economy helps to bring people into the economy who've been left behind. Social economy often provides services and benefits that the national economy is not providing. So politically, we have a situation where there's trade-offs. So on the one hand, it's a bit threatening for the government. On the other hand, it's doing some things that they want to happen. So I think that the threefold model of money doesn't really stress enough that this problem, this interest-generating machine that money is under capitalism. And one of the big problems this creates is that jobs are seen as linked to growth. If you want jobs, you've got to have growth. This is the current story, and it's a true story if you don't change the economy. But I think that, and part of, we can have more discussion about the relation between the social economy movement and the solidarity economy movement and the degrowth movement. So the social and solidarity economy gives us a possibility to escape from this dilemma. And this begins to show us how the social and solidarity economy can work with ecological limits. This is because the social and solidarity economy should not have to depend upon destructive growth. I won't say we have worked out how to do this, but the possibility is definitely there. I just wanted to tell you about some interesting and exciting work of one of our fellows in the Post-Growth Institute in the States. It's a guy called Donnie McClurkin, and he's working on the idea that 50% of the global economy could be social by the year 2050. And this is a research-based assessment, and it's an assessment that is fueled by his endless optimism and commitment. Okay, so I just want to talk a little bit about the scales issue. So if we think about the Bristol pound again, one important thing about strengthening the local economy is to keep money circulating in the locality, because big corporations extract money from the locality, and so this is a very important aspect, this local aspect. But I would want to argue that there are things that can be done at the different levels that can help this local aspect. One very interesting and quite controversial example came up last time I was in Latvia. where one of your politicians was telling me that they would like to start a Latvia Development Bank to make money available to the economy in Latvia for the projects that are democratically supported. But this is very difficult under the EU rules, and the dominant financial structures you've got come from Sweden. And just to talk again about the institutional aspect of money, I recently discovered at a conference that Germany is funding the entire development of renewables, which is big at the moment, by a kind of state bank that's not really a state bank, but at the same time, you can't do it. The national level is important. And just to go back to the Brexit thing, there's something here about people being able to vote for the kind of development they want and being allowed to have the financial instruments to help make it happen. And this will mean reform of some kind at the EU level. And at the global level, you may be amazed to hear that quite a lot of the institutions are moving away very fast from the neoliberalism of the past. There's a lot of change happening that we can help influence, that we need to be making the argument at the global level about what it is that can help resilient local solidarity economy. And just to, on a bigger level, thinking about social movements for sustainability, it's very, very important that we help make more solidarity between people working in the natural economy. So I'm thinking of movements like peasant movements, movements for local restoration, indigenous peoples who know how to look after their forests and lands, and people who work in the industrial economy. That means that people in justice movements who are working in the industrial economy, like the unions and related organisations, need to learn and understand more about the ecological processes and the knowledge, respect the knowledge of people who work with the land. But as the director of the International Labour Organization said, there will be no jobs on a dead planet. So, thank you for listening. That's it for now.